think of CEOs, we often imagine decades of experience, long resumes, boardrooms filled with veterans, and maybe a few gray hairs. But what happens when leadership comes early? What does it take to lead when you're still young enough for people to question you, but old enough to carry real responsibility? Today on Common Ground, we're sitting down with Brian Grant, who stepped into the role of CEO of First Cloud Consultants in his mid-20s. We're talking about pressure, discipline, trust, and what it really means to lead so early. I'm your host, Daniel Mullings. Let's find common ground. Now, Brian, we're so excited to have you here today. I mean, tell us a little bit about what you do. What's the name of the company? What does the company do?
Thank you for having me. So I'm 24. I got promoted to the role of CEO of First Cloud Consultants Limited. At the time, we just offered cloud infrastructure as a service. However, during my tenure thus far, I've managed to expand our service to be competitive in the tech industry, right? To grow ourselves so we can get more clients, more revenues, and to be different, because everyone is offering the same thing in technology, which is software development of that sort.
So you said you were 24 years old when you were appointed to CEO. Please take us back to that moment. Like when you got the call, what did you feel like? Were you excited, nervous?
It was a mixture, because I understood the current standing of the company. Whilst working there, I understood the standing. We know we weren't in a position to be that competitive. So it was a bit of pressure first. It was a surreal moment, that the fact that they considered me. But the realization kicked in like probably 2 minutes after I got the call. So I was like, what do I do now? So it was really a surreal moment mixed with the pressure and the stress that it has to come with.
So how did you get to the position? Like, tell us a little bit about your journey before. Like, did you study leadership or study maybe IT? You said that you're working in. Did you do a bit of those studies before? Like, what led you to that moment?
Interesting question. I'm a graduate of the Amber Academy. So I was in the second cohort, one of the 2 guinea pigs for the program. And from that program, I managed to develop the skills of real hard work and teamwork and collaboration, and being in a space with multiple people. You've learned to resolve conflicts. You've learned to lead a team of different people to accomplish the goal of a specific software per se. And after graduating, I did my internship at the Amber Group for a year. During that time frame, I developed one of the softwares that have been published with a nationwide application and website. I was on the server end of that. And you get to see leaders in that company. Dushan Savadia, a lot of persons speak of him, a lot of persons know him. He's expanding his company, he's growing, he has ideas, and he's pushing towards it. So you see leaders like this, and you decide to say, hey, I'm going to emulate this leader. Certain qualities that he has, you don't have to take everything from him, but certain qualities that he has, you take it and you put it into your life. So I've done that, and then afterwards I did software analytics or quality analyst. I was able to learn more about the software, more intricate, how it works, especially in financial sector. I was able to know the inner workings of softwares. I was so curious, because I'm a very curious person. Anybody who knows me know that I'm very curious, and I love to learn. So everybody is aware of Udemy, and I would take on courses.
Actually, not everybody might know what Udemy is.
That's true.
Yeah.
Udemy is it's a digital learning platform. You're able to upskill, garner new skills, and learn just more learning without going to university. You get professional certifications. You have very experienced instructors. It's like Amazon, but for learning.
Okay.
So I went there and I learned cybersecurity and cloud administration and cloud architecture, after which I matriculated into a job because I garnered the skills and the knowledge. So I decided, hey, it's time for experience. and I've got the opportunity to work as a cyber analyst at a microfinancing institution, after which I matriculated it over to cloud administration because of curiosity,
Okay.
which has led me here. So it's a lot of technical knowledge, and the environment that I'm in, I'm very adaptable and I'm very observant. So you can spot leaders and you can take, a page from their book and add it to you.
I get that. I mean, a lot of persons say that, when they say a young leader, they say that person got lucky. Or, like there's this idea that you didn't work to earn it.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who says that?
In my book, when someone calls me lucky, I think it's disrespectful. Because you're basically downplaying the hard work that I've done. Now, because you don't see the hard work someone puts in, doesn't mean that they're not doing the work, right? So I think going to somebody after achieving something, it doesn't have to be a CEO role. It can just be supervisor. And you'd be like, oh, you're lucky. I don't think that's a sentiment that you should give to someone after the hard work, because they would have done something to achieve a promotion or making extra money. It doesn't matter where it goes, but calling someone lucky, no.
I have to agree with that. So what do you think was the first decision that you made that made you say, you know what, I'm reach, like I actually am CEO? Like, what was that first decision or moment maybe for you?
There are many. I would say cutting back cost. And it would be, and I say that's the most difficult decision, because one wrong move can cripple the company. And the position it was in at the time, it was a fragile decision. So we have to look at what is needed now and what we plan to do for the future. What are our goals? So we sat down and we discussed, what are our goals? How do we achieve it? Look at the current infrastructure of the company and say, we might need this in the future, but we don't need it now. So it's kind of cutting back cost, and it's a very difficult decision to make.
Wow. And as you stepped into that role and you're making those heavy-hitting or hard-hitting decisions, did you have moments where you felt imposter syndrome? Saying, boy, is this really a role that I am able to step into?
Absolutely. Anyone that says that they don't have imposter syndrome in any role that they have, once you're just starting out, little to no experience, you're going to have imposter syndrome. You're going to feel as if what you're doing is wrong. But the main thing, though, having imposter syndrome is not the problem. It's pondering on that.
Right.
Because that then hinders your confidence. It makes you think that the decision you're making is not the right one. So you have to be confident in any decision you make. You have to be confident. You know them ever say wrong and strong? Sometimes the confidence that you have, it's really the driving point for you. So you're really motivating yourself, even if you're not sure about the outcome of that, but you're confident in what or the plan that you have for that. So yeah, you have to be really confident.
So you say wrong and strong.
Wrong and strong.
And recognizing that whichever decision you do make, there will be repercussions that come with it, whether it's positive or negative, but you're able to handle it. That's what I hear you saying.
Absolutely. In life, it doesn't matter in work and outside of work, you have to know how to filter negativity. Because as a leader, not everyone is going to agree with what you say. You see it every day with our popular leaders. They make a decision. You have probably 60% of the population agreeing with that decision, and the next 40% is saying, hey, why are you doing this? It doesn't benefit me. But the results is the only thing that should concern you, not necessarily the negativity. And in the same breath, I would like to highlight constructive criticism. Sometimes the decision that you make and the criticism you receive, sometimes it's an opinion.
Yeah.
And that opinion can not change your mindset, but it gives you another idea, right? It builds the character. It builds how you make a decision in the future. So it's really, you have to know how to filter negativity, and then you take constructive criticism from all that feedback and get rid of the negativity. Because you're going to have negative people. They just don't want to see you strive, per se. Yeah.
Brian, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. When we come back, we're going to be speaking about the pressures that come with leadership because it looks nice on the surface, but there is difficulty that comes with it. I'm your host, Danielle Mullings. We'll be right back with more Common Ground. Welcome back to Common Ground. I'm your host, Danielle Mullings. Now, we've been having a very thoughtful conversation with Brian about stepping into leadership at a young age. But before we continue, we pause to ask our viewers one big question. What do you dream of leading one day? Let's hear from them.
Hello world, I'm Luciana and I spend excited and I dream of leading my own world-renowned all-inclusive hotel chain.
It would be a foundation. It would be a public speaking media foundation, somewhere where you can go like a tech house to really improve your skills and learn more things and get certified in the media industry. Yeah.
In the future, I hope to lead a company's HR department or operations management department, and that's how I feel I'll feel fulfilled and be successful.
Hopefully, I would like to lead any form of organization that is related to New York. I would like to be the Ministry of Labor or the Commercial Officer, as well as hopefully really try to make an impact on the youth to come up with.
Wow, it's so amazing to hear our young people share such amazing dreams that they have. And of course, with every big dream comes big responsibility. So Brian, we want to go back to you here in studio and kind of hear what are some of the pressures of being a CEO at such a young age?
The expectations. Being young is only one aspect, but the position still holds expectations. You expect to make quarterly quotas. You expect to hire accordingly. You expect to lead your team to success, and the decisions you make should be in the best interest of the company. So in those aspects, your age really doesn't matter, right? Because that moment you get the call and you get a promotion, you feel that the joy, the work starts immediately after, because there's no time to waste, especially in a fragile moment, and you know you have goals and objectives, and you have a team that's now depending on you. I cannot sit down and be like, oh yeah, I got this position, so let's research and see. No, it's just sitting with the team, seeing where everything is at, and making decisions. So it really comes with a lot. The age is a factor, yes, but the responsibilities of the role.
It's going to be a bigger part. So tell me, leadership can sometimes be said to be lonely. How do you manage that? Like, what is your support system as a leader?
My friends and family, close friends and family. I don't think they understand just a 10-minute conversation with them. It takes the weight off your shoulders. And anybody out there in leadership and anybody out there is running a company, they understand that you spend 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours with your friends or your family, just enjoying yourself, laughing, running jokes. The pressure is like you don't have any responsibilities in that very moment. But once it ends, it's back on the road, because once you check that phone, it's work.
And then how do you sort of navigate, separating your personal life almost, or like this work-life balance that many young people are seeking? How do you balance that as a CEO?
This might sound funny, but having 2 different phones. Yeah.
All right. So what's the function of each one?
So you have your personal phone, your close friends and family. They are on that phone. On the work phone, just strictly work. And anybody who wants to get you as a professional, they have that company, or the CUG as they say, for you. And on that weekend, if you decide to say, hey, I'm not going to work this weekend, turn it off. Because if they can't get you, you can't do work. That's how I see it, and that's my technique. It has worked thus far, and so it's a literal separation, if you get what I mean. Yeah,
that makes sense. And I think there are lots of young people that are trying to find that same balance in the workplace, whether as a CEO or as an employee. What would you say are some other bits of advice you would give for young people who are aspiring to leadership, and maybe for the first time they're stepping into leading a project in the workplace or leading a small team as they get older? What bits of advice would you have for them?
be confident, be strategic. Confident plays a very, it's a key role. It's a key factor that you should have, because if you speak confidently, you can sell anything to anyone. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but the confidence, it wins their hearts. And then you have to be strategic in a way where you have these tasks or these responsibilities. How will you achieve these tasks without going over the duration that it needs to be done? Or how will you group a set of people to work together, the different personalities, different backgrounds, different everything, different beliefs? What do you do to ensure that there's no conflict, there is nothing that hinders the work at all? So you have to be strategic and you have to be confident.
Okay, so there's that need to be strategic and confident. And earlier you were mentioning about, sometimes people will criticize you or you'll hear a lot of like negative feedback.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that in your leadership position, and advice you'd give as well to young people?
Leave your emotions out of it. The moment you get emotional, the decisions you make are considered as emotional decisions. And it lowers your self-esteem. The negativity, it lowers your self-esteem. Because if you do a presentation today and you look at the comments and they say, hey, I didn't like how you look, I didn't like how you talk, and you get self-conscious and you're like, is that how everyone saw you? But in reality, they are really just haters. They just criticize you for no reason. But as I said, constructive criticism, because if you do go to an event and someone says, hey, I think you should interact with the crowd more, it will be more interactive, get the crowd involved. Now, your next presentation, you kind of filter that into how you use it, like how you do your presentations, right? You start interacting with the crowd and start smiling more, eye contact, all of that. So you have to, as I said earlier, filter it and take your emotions out of it, because the moment you put your emotions into leadership, it hinders that decision, because you're just making an emotional decision, what suits your emotions but not the business or not the project.
Okay, so I see that need to balance emotions with logic, and sometimes we get very upset in the workplace and want to act out immediately, but being able to kind of take a step back and say, what do we actually need in this moment, and what benefits not only myself the best in this moment, but the entire company at large, the project, the wider team that I'm working within, in order to help me move forward.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we're headed to a break. I'm your host, Daniel Mullings. This is Common Ground. Welcome back to Common Ground. I'm your host, Daniel Mullings. Now we're continuing our conversation with Brian Grant, CEO of First Cloud Consultants. Now, Brian, I want to look at some of the ways that we can prepare for leadership and the kind of advice that you'd be giving to young people. So my first question to you is, what should young professionals focus on in their 20s if they want to lead one day?
Focus on themselves. You have to build yourself. You are your personal business. That's your personal brand. You focus on your career. You make your plan. And there's this old thing that they always do, all leaders say, you write down your goals. You want 1 year, 2 year, 5 year goals. And then I like to add to that your steps, the steps to these goals. So on a separate piece of paper under each heading, you say, hey, I want to buy a car. How will you buy the car? What steps will you take? So you have to focus on yourself. While I do understand that persons want to party and enjoy themselves, that's a part of our culture. We know how to have fun. But when it gets serious, you have to focus on yourself. You have to build yourself. You cannot wait until it's too late for you to buckle down and say, okay, I'm going to do this now. Because, time waits on no man. You can't buy back time. You can't go back in time. So I think if you build yourself little by little, you don't have to go all in, but you build yourself little by little. So you build your personal brand. Be an all-rounder. Be embedded in your career.
I like that thinking. Like, something I personally always say as well is I like to think, what is the best next step that I can take? So, of course, you have this whole big ladder maybe that you want to climb or this big journey you want to go on. But everything begins with that step. And I kind of hear you saying that in terms of identifying what are your big goals and then what's the next best step, essentially, that you can take to achieve it.
Because everything takes, it's one step at a time. My father always tell me from a tender age, it's one step at a time. You cannot just jump from the bottom of the ladder and jump to the middle or jump to the top. You have to go one step at a time. And sometimes the ladder is old and that step will break and you go back down to the previous step. So what will you do now to surpass that broken step that just happened?
Excellent analogy. The next one I want to go into is kind of looking at skill and just like time and dedication versus talent, right? Because sometimes when we see people achieve very quickly, we say, well, the person just talented, them just naturally have that. Like they're more than me because them they just born with more talent. But how do you kind of balance that, determination and the dedication and hours that you have to put in with persons having natural talent?
My mantra is hard work beats talent. You put in the hard work, you're going to get the results. Being talented, to me personally, is like you're born, you can sing, you're athletic and all of that. But when it comes down to business, you put in the hard work, you're learning, you're making mistakes. And I must say this as well, learn to fail. Because if you think that you're going to do this without failing, it's not going to happen, because most learning comes from when you fail, because now you know not to make that same mistake and you surpass that obstacle quicker than you did before. So you need to learn to fail. You have to learn to basically just grow yourself. I don't know any better way to put it. Just learn to fail.
So learn to fail. And my final question to you will be, what kind of leader do you want to become in the next 5 years? I know you're working on a lot of different things. Yes. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I want to be an impactful leader. I want to be known for changes, strategic drives in my country and in the Caribbean. I don't necessarily have to be the richest or a billionaire and listed, but I just want to be someone that makes an impact. Someone that's in school, they can say, hey, Brian did this, I can try this. Or Brian was here, or Brian is hosting this event, let's go there, let's hear what he has to say. So I want to make an impact on not only youths, but everyone in general. Because, they always say that old heads don't like to listen to young. But I want to change that so they can listen to me and say, hey, you know what you're talking about.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Brian. Common Grounders, thank you also for tuning in. What we've learned today is that leadership isn't just about age. It's about discipline, character, and the willingness to carry responsibility. For every young Jamaican watching, the title may not come today, but preparation always comes before elevation. Make sure that when the moment arrives, you've been building yourself into the best leader that you can be. I'm your host, Daniel Mullings. Thanks for joining us on Common Ground.